Today's meeting, convened by our American colleagues, is nothing more than yet another attempt to justify blatant aggression and interference in the internal affairs of a sovereign state. These so-called briefers cannot speak on behalf of the Iranian people. We firmly reject any attempts by the U.S. to waste council members' valuable time on briefings that are meant only to serve the interests and the position of those who convene this meeting, and briefings that are in no way related to issues of international peace and security. Violations of the aforementioned norms and principles in the current situation are obvious. They include the extremely dangerous and irresponsible rhetoric employed in recent days by U.S. leadership, which has gone as far as openly calling for the takeover of state institutions in Iran and threats to assist the protesters.
For some time now, the United States has continued to stir up the situation regarding Iran and has openly issued threats of force against Iran. Iran is an independent sovereign country. The affairs of Iran should be decided independently by the Iranian people. They should do more to promote peace and stability in the Middle East rather than the opposite. All countries should play a constructive role in promoting peace and ending conflict.
Mr. President, since the end of December, the whole world has been watching as the United States continues to escalate tensions and feel hysteria around Iran, declaring that help is already on the way. What's more, in its official statements, Washington has not even tried to cover up the genuine reasons for its alleged concern over the country's internal political situation, as it threatens new strikes against Iran. Today's meeting, convened by our American colleagues, is nothing more than yet another attempt to justify blatant aggression and interference in the internal affairs of a sovereign state. And if, as Washington puts it, Iran's authorities do not come to their senses, then Washington will solve the Iranian problem in its favorite way, through strikes aimed at overthrowing an undesirable regime. To lend credibility to their actions and to justify them, they have invited today's briefers. Individuals who have been living in the United States for some 20 years and promoting an anti-Iranian agenda in Washington's interests. These so-called briefers cannot speak on behalf of the Iranian people. We firmly reject any attempts by the U.S. to waste council members' valuable time on briefings that are meant only to serve the interests and the position of those who convene this meeting, and briefings that are in no way related to issues of international peace and security. Just took place overall. MS. Mr. President, we have carefully studied the letters circulated in the Security Council in recent days from the Iranian mission. We express our solidarity with the people of Iran and move forward, mourn all innocent victims. We see that hostile external forces are attempting to exploit the current situation in order to overthrow a government they find objectionable and destroy the Islamic Republic of Iran as a sovereign and independent state. At the same time, we know that the authorities in Tehran have declared and reaffirmed their commitment to their international obligations, including respect for human rights and ensuring conditions for the peaceful expression of peace. Public opinion, while at the same time fulfilling their inherent duty to protect citizens' lives, public order, and the country's territorial integrity. As far as we can tell, the protest momentum has begun to subside and the situation is gradually normalizing. The government of Iran has taken the necessary steps to stabilize the economic situation and has established a constructive dialogue with the public in order to address any emerging issues. Mass rallies have taken place in the Islamic Republic of Iran in support of the country's supreme leader and its independent course. The Russian Federation is convinced that today's meeting of the Council should be approached through the lens of its mandate to maintain international peace and security and uphold international law, not through the lens of international law, Iran's internal political affairs. Violations of the aforementioned norms and principles in the current situation are obvious. They include the extremely dangerous and irresponsible rhetoric employed in recent days by U.S. leadership, which has gone as far as openly calling for the takeover of state institutions in Iran and threats to assist the protesters. Statements amounts to nothing other than incitements to violently overthrow the constitutional order of a sovereign state. They are a gross violation of paragraphs 4 and 7 of Article 2 of the UN Charter, which prohibit the threat or use of force and establish the principle of non-interference in the domestic affairs of states. Mr. President, what is happening on the streets of Iran in recent days has gone far beyond peaceful protest. There have been documented cases of firearms use, killings of law enforcement officers as well as civilians, arson, attacks on medical facilities and public institutions, as well as attacks on emergency service facilities. These actions cannot be covered up by the pretext of freedom of expression or protecting human rights. What is happening in Iran is yet another example of the use of tried and tested methods for a color revolution, in which specially trained armed provocateurs transform peaceful protests into senseless violence, riots, destruction of public property, and brutal killings of police officers, state security personnel, and peaceful protesters, including children. As we have already seen on numerous occasions and repeatedly in a wide variety of different sovereign states, all these actions are either directly orchestrated or supported by powerful external forces and foreign entities that are deeply interested in a so-called total overthrow and complete regime change. In the present situation, these external forces are not even bothering to conceal their involvement in violent actions, especially given that the President of the United States has openly called on protesters to take over Iranian state institutions. The U.S. and its cheerleaders are actively exploiting the economic and social difficulties faced by ordinary Iranians, difficulties caused by unlawful sanctions, pressure imposed on Iran by Western states. They are using this to inflame public tensions and destabilize the domestic political situation. The current situation is clearly in line with Washington's declared policy, once courted by its allies, of maximum pressure on Tehran in order to advance their own political interests in the Middle East. They are using every means available to achieve this, and this includes not only unlawful unilateral sanctions imposed in circumvention of the Security Council and in blatant violation of the UN Charter, but also unceremonious blackmail of other states by increases in trade tariffs. Our Western colleagues are not above using the Security Council as a tool to promote their delusional agenda. A striking example of this is the attempt by the UK, France, and Germany to create the illusion of reinstating, including anti-Iranian Security Council resolutions through the purported triggering of the snapback mechanism envisioned in Resolution 2231 of the Security Council. Their justification for this relied on Western states' fabrications about some sort of threat to international peace and security posed by Iran's peaceful nuclear program. And this is despite the fact that the IAEA Director General has never reached such conclusions in his report on reports on the matter, nor found evidence of diversion of nuclear material to military purposes, and the entire crisis surrounding the implementation of the JCPOA was provoked by Washington's unilateral withdrawal from the nuclear deal in 2018. Nevertheless, the EU3 continues to promote its baseless narrative and deepen divisions within the Security Council. What is most concerning is Washington's aggressive course towards the use of military force and threats of its use against Iran. We condemn such actions, no matter what arguments are used to justify them as a gross violation of international law and the UN Charter. We strongly urge the hotheads in Washington and other capitals who seem to be contemplating a repeat military venture to come to their senses and avoid a repetition of the tragedy of June 2025 when U.S.-Israeli aggression nearly resulted in a major nuclear catastrophe with inevitable humanitarian and environmental consequences. We demand that the United States and its like-minded partners refrain from further reckless steps, including those involving nuclear facilities. They should rather focus on providing solid assurances against further confrontation and resume joint efforts to find potential solutions. This includes addressing unfounded concerns regarding Iran's peaceful nuclear program. All of this should be done on the basis of international law and seeking a balance of all stakeholders' interests. Country stands ready to assist them. This in every possible way. Mr. President, the Russian Federation decisively condemns all forms of external interference, incitement to violence, and threats of use of force against the friendly nation of Iran. We call on the conveners of today's meeting to stop making themselves out to be a global judge and put an end to their escalatory actions. Actions risk plunging the region into even bloodier chaos that could even easily spill beyond its borders. And a separate appeal to our colleagues on the Council and all UN member states. We call on them to prevent a new large-scale escalation and ensure that the Security Council is not used to justify unlawful regime change scenarios or to name and shame the legitimate authorities of a sovereign state. Thank you.
Mr. President, I thank Assistant Secretary General Poby for her briefing. We welcome the representative of Iran to today's meeting. China and Russia have already stated their positions to the Security Council members regarding the U.S. invitation to the relevant briefer. Recently, the situation in Iran has attracted widespread attention. China has noted that the Iranian foreign minister has provided an explanation on this matter in a letter to the UN Secretary General. For some time now, the United States has continued to stir up the situation regarding Iran and has openly issued threats of force against Iran. The Middle East is shrouded in the clouds of war and tensions are continuously escalating. China has always advocated for adherence to the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and international law. We oppose the use or threat of use of force in international relations. We oppose imposing one's own will on other countries. We oppose the world regressing to the law of the jungle. Sovereign equality and non-interference in internal affairs are fundamental principles of international law and modern relations. They are the most basic norms of modern international relations. Iran is an independent sovereign country. The affairs of Iran should be decided independently by the Iranian people. China supports the safeguarding of Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. We call on the international community to support the Iranian government and people in overcoming current difficulties and to maintain national security and social stability. Resorting to force cannot solve problems, it will only make them more complicated and difficult to resolve. Any military adventurism will only push the region into an unpredictable abyss. We urge the US side to abide by the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and to abandon its obsession with the use of force. All parties should exercise restraint and work together to play their due role in safeguarding world peace and security. At present, the Middle East remains the most fragile region in terms of global security. The risks of turmoil and war have always remained high. The people of the region have a strong desire for peace and a deep yearning for development. China has noted the deep concerns of the vast majority of regional countries over military confrontation, as well as their sincere hope to resolve disputes peacefully through dialogue. China hopes that the US and other relevant parties will heed the calls of the international community and regional countries. They should do more to promote peace and stability in the Middle East rather than the opposite. All countries should play a constructive role in promoting peace and ending conflict. They should avoid intensifying contradictions and pouring fuel on the fire. The call for peace and the pursuit of development is the shared aspiration of all peoples. History has repeatedly shown that blind faith in force and relentless pressure and reckless interference will only create more conflict and hatred. No country has the right to decide the fate of another. Any actions that place themselves above international law must not be allowed. We call on the international community to stand on the right side of history, to stand for fairness and justice, and to make unremitting efforts to safeguard peace and stability in the Middle East and to maintain peace and tranquility in the world. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.